Hello, this video is intended to help you understand how grades are determined and inputted into Infinite Campus in a standards-based reporting system. Let's start with a brief overview. Evidence will be collected of understanding for each learning intention. This evidence could look like traditional quizzes and tests. It could be science labs or projects or essays, either final drafts or rough drafts. Once the evidence is collected, your teacher will determine a score based on that evidence. So your student will either achieve the learning, be progressing towards the learning, be beginning to learn, or have insufficient learning. Once the scores are determined, then they will be put together and a letter grade will be assigned to your student for the course. Learning intentions are the foundational building block of standards-based grading. A learning intention is a specific topic or amount of content that students are expected to learn. An example of a learning intention from English would be, I am learning to produce clear and coherent writing so that we can effectively communicate to a variety of audiences and for multiple purposes. An American government learning intention example would be, I am learning to apply political concepts and processes to real-life scenarios so I can think critically about the role of government in a variety of situations. I would encourage you to reference the syllabi from your students' classes in order to see what the learning intentions are for this year. Within a learning intention, evidence is collected throughout the unit. Once evidence has been collected, then a score is going to be determined from that evidence. Once we have multiple scores on different learning intentions, then we're going to look across those learning intentions to determine a letter grade for the class using a logic rule. The logic rule our district is going to use asks questions about which levels of learning students have. The first question we ask is, does the student have any learning intentions with a score of insufficient evidence? If the answer is yes, then the student will be assigned an F in the class until they can demonstrate evidence of understanding. If the answer is no, then we're going to ask, are any learning intentions scored at a beginning? If the answer is yes, then we're going to look at majority of learning intentions. If a majority are in the beginning level, then that will be a D. If a majority of learning intentions are progressing or achieving, then that will be a C. Now, if your student has no beginnings, we're then going to look at the majority between progressings and achievings. If a majority is progressing, that will be a B, and if a majority is achieving, that will be an A. How this will look in Infinite Campus is a little different than what you've seen in the past. Moving forward, each learning intention will be listed in Infinite Campus. Underneath each learning intention will be an overall score for that learning intention with a list of the evidence below it that demonstrates what was used to determine that overall score. You'll notice here I've listed 5 pieces of evidence. However, the specific number and types of evidence that are collected by each teacher will vary. At the bottom of Infinite Campus, under the semester title, you will see a list of all the overall scores from the learning intentions for the course, along with the letter grade that's been determined using the logic rule. You will notice here that the student has a B, but there's an 85% put into the gradebook. Unfortunately, Infinite Campus requires us to put in a number to determine the letter grade. So we're going to use 95% for an A, 85% for a B, 75% for a C, and so forth. Note this does not mean that it is 85% of the points. It is just meant to indicate the letter grade that your student has. As we move forward with standards-based reporting, if you have questions about things in the gradebook, the learning intentions for a course, or the letter grade that your student has been given, I would encourage you to reach out to their classroom teacher to help understand why those scores are in the gradebook and what your student's grade is. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Have a great day.